الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وآله وصحبه. أما بعد, my dear brothers and sisters, my dear children and grandchildren, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Can you see me? I can't see you. Today, inshallah, I will continue my talk regarding the invocations and the supplications by the prophets in the Quran. Starting today from Surah Ibrahim, chapter 14, verses 40 and 41. Listen very carefully, please, to how these prophets supplicated. How did they pray? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Listen, this is Ibrahim. Ibrahim is saying that, عليه الصلاة والسلام. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. Ibrahim is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to empower him, to enable him to establish regular prayers. رب اجعلني, make me one of those مقيم الصلاة, those who would pray regularly, those who would not miss their prayers. ومن ذريتي, not only me, but my children as well. My prosperity, my progeny, my children and the grandchildren. So Ibrahim is not only praying for himself, he's praying for himself and his children and all members of his family, that Allah would make them to establish regular prayers. مقيم الصلاة. ربنا اغفر لي, my Lord forgive me. Ibrahim is asking for forgiveness. ولوالدي, and for my parents. وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب, and to all the believers on the day of judgment. So the prayer of Ibrahim is not a selfish prayer. It includes everyone. It includes all of us. So when you pray, don't only pray for yourself. Pray for all the others. Even pray for the non-Muslims for guidance. You should include them in your prayers, that may Allah guide them. Who knows, might become Muslims and would support the causes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So remember these two prayers in verses 40 and 41, chapter 14. رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي رَبَّنَا وَتَقَبَّلْ دُعَاء. Accept my prayer. Ibrahim is saying to Allah, please accept my prayer. What about us? Look at the humility of these prophets. He's asking Allah to accept his prayer. رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي رَبَّنَا وَتَقَبَّلْ دُعَاء رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْحِسَابِ. Forgive me and forgive my parents and all the believers on the day of judgment. In Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, we are told about a special prayer by Prophet Jonah, Yunus ibn Matta, alayhi salatu wassalam. We know that Yunus was sent to a community who rejected him, and they were so harsh to him. And unfortunately, he resigned his job. He walked away from his responsibilities. He was not patient enough to deliver the message of Allah. He walked towards the sea. He found a boat. He went on the boat. There was a storm. The sailors threw him into the water because he brought bad omen on them. A big fish swallowed him. I want you to imagine what was inside the tummy of the whale. I want you to imagine the darkness, the bad smell, the weight of the water. What did he say while he was in the tummy of the whale? What was the invocation said by Yunus while he was in the tummy of the whale? When he ran out of his responsibilities, لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. What does it mean? There is no God but you. glory to you, surely I have wronged my soul. And Allah tells us that He delivered him from his misery, from his stress. And in the same manner, He delivers the believers. فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So you as a believer, if you say such an invocation, Allah would deliver you from your stress. Very often I would wake up in the morning and I feel I am in the tummy of the whale. So many problems coming from every direction. I don't know what to do. What would I say? I would say this prayer all the time, continuously. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. And Allah clearly states, whoever would say this, Allah would deliver him from his stress and from his misery. So remember, and I'm going to read the full verse now, and just to explain few words mentioned in the verse. وَذَنُّونَ noon. Noon refers in the Quran to a fish, is also known as noon. Al-Hut, you can use the word Al-Hut or noon. وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا. And remember the noon when he departed in wrath. He was upset. People didn't listen to him, so instead of delivering the message and being patient, he walked away. Like when you resigned, you had an argument with your boss and you resigned your job. You walked out of your job. Or you had an argument with your wife and you decided to divorce her. Be patient. Learn to be patient. Please. These are responsible. You can call it irresponsible actions. Be patient. Whatever you do, be patient. Please. وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. He thought that Allah will have no power over him. That's what went into his mind. Okay, I'm walking. Fine. This is my resignation. Not working for you anymore. Goodbye. فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. He thought we will have no power over him. That's what went into the mind of Yunus عليه الصلاة والسلام. فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ. He called us الظُّلُمَات, darkness. Allah here is referring darkness of the soul and darkness of the environment. Inside the tummy of the whale, it was so dark, so smelly, awful. He remained there for 3 days and 3 nights. And Allah says in another verse, if he was not one of those who remembered us all the time, he would have remained in the tummy of the whale until the day of judgment. Allah says this, لَلَبِثَ فِي بَطْنِهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. He would have remained in the tummy of the whale until the day of judgment. Can you imagine? The whale would have been commanded not to digest him, not to die, and Jonah would have been in the tummy of the whale until the day of judgment. So try to remember, when you do something wrong, say sorry. Please, be patient and say sorry. Please. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاستجبنا له. And this is very important. In the next verse 88, chapter 21, فاستجبنا له. We responded to him. We accepted his invocation. وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ. And we delivered him from his distress. Very often you would feel it. You would feel it that when the distress is coming from every direction. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to his invocation, to the invocation of Jonah, delivered him from his distress, and then Allah confirms, وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And in the same manner, we would deliver the believers. So it's very important when you do something wrong, sincerely say sorry and continuously ask for forgiveness and be patient, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deliver you from your distress. let us mention now some of the invocations of prophets Jacob and Joseph, Yaqub wa Yusuf alayhim as-salatu was-salam. In the story of Yusuf in chapter 12, we are told that the most important prayer, could you please stand up and fill the gaps? There are many people waiting outside, please. We are told about the prayers of Yaqub, Jacob, alayhi salatu wassalam. He prayed for patience when he was given the bad news by his children that Joseph been devoured by the wolf. He asked for patience. He prayed and invoked Allah to give him patience, to be able to persevere patiently regarding the bad news and the evil planning and the plotting of his own children, because he wanted to keep the family together. Jacob did not kick his children out of the family. He continued to take care of them, to bring them back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any other father would have kicked them out of the house, disowned them, because they neglected their duties, and Joseph was devoured by the wolf. That's what they claimed. So what did Yaqub say? فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. He is praying for beautiful patience. Patience is very bitter. It's very hard and difficult to be patient. You need to be patient to practice patience. Not everyone can be patient, because خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ مِنْ عَجَلٍ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا. Man is always in haste. You cannot be patient. We are, all of us, including myself, we are very impatient. But Yaqub asked for فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. I'm going to persevere patient, but I'm going to enjoy it. Oh my goodness. I'm going to enjoy being patient. I'm not going to complain. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. Allah is my helper regarding what you have claimed. And when, at the end of the story, when Benjamin was kept in Egypt, and the children of Jacob went back and told him that your son has committed theft, and you can ask the caravan we came through and the village we went to. Again, he used exactly the same invocation. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. Again, sabr jameel. Okay, please Allah, make me persevere patiently and let me enjoy it. The word jameel in Arabic means something which is beautiful. So he's asking for beautiful patience. And then he's saying to Allah, عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا. I pray that Allah would bring all my children back to me. All my 12 children, the 2 in Egypt, Joseph and Benjamin, and the other 10. And here the prayer is for the family to be reunited. Please, parents, please, if you are not talking to your children, please, make an effort to reconcile. It doesn't matter how old they are. Please, let us have peace at our homes. And the best role model here is Yaqub, Jacob, who embarked on a rehabilitation plan to bring his children back to the way of Allah. Let us make an effort, please. Talk to your parents, talk to your children. Let us have peace at home, please. In verse 86, and this is very interesting verse which I need to share with you, chapter 12, verse 86. The grief made him lose his sight. He became blind. And he was crying all the time. although he was persevering patiently and enjoying it. So in verse 86, قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. I only complain of my suffering and my grief to Allah. I only complain of my destruction and anguish to Allah. And I know from Allah that you do not know. So he is not complaining about what's happening to him. No. Jacob's plaint to Allah is about himself, not about Allah's doings. He bewails the destruction of his mind and his occasional breaking out of those bounds of patience which he had set for himself. He's complaining about himself. He's not complaining about Allah. إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. I only complain of my suffering, my grief, my destruction and anguish to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I accept what Allah has tested me with, but I do not complain about that. I only complain about my shortfalls. That's all. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam invoked a very interesting invocation in this surah, verses 33 and 34. And I say this invocation to the young men. Yusuf found himself in a very difficult situation. The wife of the Aziz, the wife of the honorable man who bought him from the slave market and brought him home, tried to seduce Yusuf. And not only the wife of the Aziz, but also other women tried to seduce him. Yusuf was an honorable young man. He feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he knew very well that committing fornication is a major crime. And he asked for protection from Allah. And this is something I want all the young men, please, to remember how did Yusuf react. قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. My Lord, I would rather prefer to go to the prison than committing fornication with these women. وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن. This is the invocation. Young men should say, وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن وأكن من الجاهلين. Listen very carefully, please. Oh my Lord, the prison is dearer to my liking than that to which they invite me to do. Unless you turn away their snare from me, I should feel inclined towards them and join the ranks of the ignorant. If you don't avert from me their evil plan, I might incline towards them. رَبِّ إِلَّا تَصْرِفْ. You see, subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want you to live the experience of Yusuf. He was a slave. He was a slave. And a slave should not disobey the owner, his master. And this is the wife of the Aziz, and all the women in her circle admired Yusuf so much, and they wanted him. And they threatened that we will put you in the prison if you don't do that. And he said, no, I would rather prefer to go to the prison than doing that. And then he invoked Allah. Here is the invocation, the supplication, the dua of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُنْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Young men, this is verse number 33, chapter 12. I want you to memorize it, please. And when you go home, you read it. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ. His Lord accepted his invocation. سبحانه وتعالى. فصرف عنه كيدهن. He removed their evil planning and plotting. إنه هو السميع العليم, because he is the one who hears and knows. And he went into the prison. They imprisoned him. And he stayed in the prison for a number of years. Rather than doing something wrong, a slave disobeyed his master and preferred to go into the prison than doing something wrong which would upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the end of the story, verse 101, I want you to listen to the invocation of Yusuf when he brought his parents to Egypt and all his brothers, and he welcomed them. And in this invocation, listen to the words chosen by Yusuf when he said that. ربي قد آتيتني من الملك وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث. My Lord, you have bestowed on me some power. You gave me authority in Egypt. And you taught me how to interpret dreams. So firstly, he is admitting the favors of Allah upon him. So very often when you say a prayer, when you invoke Allah, remind yourself with the favors and the bounties which Allah has bestowed on you. Admit them. And then, فاطر السماوات. Praise Allah. فاطر السماوات والأرض. The originator of the heavens and the earth. أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة. You are my friend, you are my protector in this life and in the hereafter. توفني مسلمة. Oh my goodness. Yusuf, the son of Yaqub, the son of Ishaq, the son of Ibrahim, alayhim salatu wassalam, all of them, is asking Allah that when he dies, he would die as a Muslim. How many of us are really worried or concerned about this? توفني مسلما. When you take my soul from my body, please take it as a Muslim. Think about it. When Jacob was dying and his 12 children were surrounding him, he asked them a very simple question. Whom would you worship after I have gone? A prophet is asking 12 prophets, not human beings like us, ordinary people. Whom would you worship after I have gone? قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. We would worship your Lord and the Lord of all your ancestors, Ibrahim and Ismail and Ishaq, one God, and we submit to him in Islam. Can you imagine? These people were so worried of dying not Muslims. What about us? Please think about it. توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين. And please take my soul as a Muslim and make me join the righteous. وألحقني بالصالحين. Make me join the righteous. A prophet asking Allah that when he dies as a Muslim. So remember this, please. Another prophet Job. Ayub. Remember the name, Ayub, Job. Don't confuse him with Yaqub, Jacob. Ayub was tested so badly that he lost everything. He lost his health, his property, his people, his power, his authority. He lost everything you can imagine. But he never lost his faith in Allah's mercy and forgiveness. Never. So if you lose anything dear in your life, say, Alhamdulillah, I did not lose my faith. Allahumma la taj'al musibatana fi dinina. Oh Allah, don't make my musibah in my deen. You tested me in my property, in my health, in my family, in my status. But please, don't test me in my religion. Please. I don't want to die, but as a Muslim. irrespective of whatever you might go through. So Ayub was tested so badly. Any normal human being wouldn't have been able to take it. He said 2 prayers, one in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, and another one in Surah Sad, chapter 38. And I want you to listen carefully, please, to the 2 invocations. Try to memorize. What I want you to do, please. This is recorded, alhamdulillah. May Allah bless my dear son Bilal here. Listen to it and take notes. You would need these prayers because we all go through these tests. None of us is immune. Allah clearly states in the Quran, you are all going to be tested, whether you like it or you don't like it. وَلَا تُبْلَوُنَّ وَلَا نَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. You are all going to be tested. So let us learn, at least take the prescription and the medication of these prophets and use them, please. So in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, Ayub, alayhi salatu wassalam, وأيوب إذ نادى ربه أني مسني الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. You see, Ayub, Job, he called his Lord, أني مسني الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. Truly distress has seized me, but you are the most merciful of those that are merciful. Always bring the mercy of Allah into your invocation. يا أرحم الراحمين ارحمنا برحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة من سواك. So Ayub here, he prayed to Allah, أني مسني الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. Truly distress has seized me, but you are the most merciful of those that are merciful. فاستجبنا له. You will always see it. فاستجبنا له. We responded to him. We listened to him. فكشفنا ما به من ضر. So we removed the distress that was on him. وآتيناه أهله ومثلهم معهم رحمة من عندنا وذكرى للعابدين. So we listened to him, we removed the distress that was on him, and we restored his people to him and doubled their number as a grace from ourselves and a thing for commemoration for all who serve us. Job is the pattern of humility, patience, and faith in Allah. It was with these weapons that he fought and conquered evil. So the tests which he had to go through, none of us could take them. And in spite of this, he continued to invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show mercy on him. He used the words, وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. You are the most merciful of those that are merciful. Let me see if the footnote 2739. He loses his peace of mind and he cursed the day he was born. That was in something in the Old Testament. All this is recorded in the book of Job in the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, there is a book called Job. And in that book, you can read the story. In the Quran, we have just the abbreviation of the story of Job. Nothing could be further from truth than saying that he lost his peace of mind or resorted to curses during the period of his trial. You will always find, unfortunately to say, the stories in the Old Testament actually, they paint these prophets with a negative attitude or picture which completely contradicts with what Allah is saying about them in the Quran. The next invocation he said, and again in Surah Sad, chapter 38, واذكر عبدنا أيوب إذ نادى ربه أني مسني الشيطان بنصب وعذاب. Mention in the book the story of Ayub, Job. إذ نادى ربه, he called his Lord. Satan has afflicted me with distress and suffering. So he referred his agony, his pain, his distress to Satan here. The word massani means he touched me. Satan has afflicted me with distress and suffering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next verse, he told him what to do. He asked him to walk into a stream of water and to wash with cold water and drink from it. اركض برجلك هذا مغتسل بارد وشراب. Strike with your foot. Here is water wherein to wash, cool and refreshing, and water to drink. Let me read the footnote 4199. The distress was of many kinds. He suffered from loathsome sores. He lost his home, his possessions, and his family, and almost his balance of mind. But he did not lose faith, but turned to Allah, and the recuperative process began. So always remember the example of Ayub, who lost everything. He did not lose his faith. And the same applies to all these prophets when they go through hardship. Because when they remember Allah, they knew very well that Allah, number one, will respond to them. Number two, Allah is so gracious and merciful. Number three, if they are not going to be responded to immediately, they know the time will come when Allah would respond to them, because it is not the right moment at the moment. It is not the right time. When Jacob had to wait for many, many years for his son Joseph to come back, Jacob was praying all the time. He did not stop. So when you have a problem and you are praying for Allah's mercy, don't be impatient if Allah does not respond immediately to your invocation. There is the right moment for it to be addressed by Allah. It's not good for you yet that Allah would respond now. And then Allah wants to listen to your cry, to listen. He loves to see how much you are humbling yourself. You are actually invoking Allah. You feel tadarru'an wa khufya when you pray to Him with humility and fear, hoping that He will respond to you, and the fear of not that He might not respond to you. So please try to emulate these prophets in the way they invoked Allah. We have so many examples in the Quran. And next week, inshallah, I will continue with the prayers of more prophets. So you will have a collection of all the invocations of these prophets in the Quran. Thank you very much indeed for listening.